Hey, Peter, pronounce him. Thanks for waiting. What are you hung up on?
Matt, and promise it's a privilege to get to talk to you both today. I'm sorry, I just quickly
Hey,
pulled
Peter.
over. I was driving, but now I'm stopped. So,
Thank you
Cool.
for pulling
um,
over.
Thank you for that.
absolutely.
Both of
Hey,
that.
real quick before I get started, Matt, you and I are from the same generation. I'm 58. I got a couple years on you, I think. But I grew up listening to a lot of talk radio before the advent of the internet. And I know you're not much of a sports guy, but there's a sports talk radio host by the name of Jim Rome that reminds me of you. Have you heard of him?
Yes, I've heard of Jim Rome. Is it relevant to anything
So,
we're going to talk about today?
it's just yeah. I mean, no, I can stop. But he just had
Yeah.
his two rules are have a take and don't suck. And every time I hear you say, "Look, we just want to know what you believe and why," I just chuckle to myself and I hear, "Just have a take and don't suck." So I think I have a take. I'm going to try not to
That's
suck. Here's
yeah, that's
here's
Oh,
what I
so
what we
believe.
far,
need.
you are borderline suck right now. So let's get to it.
Okay, here's what I believe and why. I'm a theist. I'm a Christian. My theology most closely aligns with covenant theology, and most importantly for this discussion or my questions today, I'm staunchly preterist in my eschatology. And it is in and through my alignment with the preterist proposition that we today are living 2,000 years beyond the biblical end times. And we're not waiting for Jesus to come back any minute to fix everything. And so if we want it fixed, we have to do it ourselves. That has caused me to adopt a secular humanist worldview. And so when I apply the litmus test, if I were to find out my theology is wrong tomorrow, how would that affect my worldview? I can honestly say not one iota. So I'm struggling with finding a compelling reason to abandon that theology, especially in light of the past 20 years I've spent as a preterist working with my fellow futurist Christians that are hell bent on destroying this world to bring back Jesus sooner. That they don't need to do that, but they don't have to throw their baby Jesus out with the bathwater. And so I feel like it catches more flies with honey than vinegar. So that's
Yeah,
where
I don't
that's my
give a shit.
struggle.
I don't give a shit about the practicality of your perception of your beliefs. I care about whether or not they're true. Do you have some way to
Well,
demonstrate
Okay.
that they're true?
Well, we have the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, which you and I can go there and pick up the rubble and put it in our hands and look at a
And
microscope.
and what does that demonstrate other than the destruction of partially of Jerusalem?
Well, it's the back to the prophecy. It's the prescience of the New Testament authors who
No,
predicted that
no,
to a
no.
no.
When the
Okay, of
waiter brings me a medium rare steak, is he fulfilling prophecy?
course not.
Of course not. So how can you say that the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem is a fulfillment of prophecy?
Well, there's all of the New Testament eschatology is cemented to that event. There's no eschatology new. That was their
I'm sorry.
primary concern.
I'm sorry, but I asked how you can demonstrate. So what it is you're reading things and you're finding connections with them, and therefore you assume
Yes.
that there was a prophecy and it was fulfilled. The fact that somebody asserted something and it happened doesn't mean it was prophetic, does not mean that that prophecy came from a God. It is possible for people to make predictions and for them to come true without a God involved. It is also the case that when you have the prophecy or the claim that something will happen, and the oldest date for that is after the event, that's definitely not a prediction. But even if it were a prediction, the fact that a prediction comes true doesn't tell you how it came true. So you need to demonstrate why someone should think that what you see as a biblical prophecy is in fact best explained by a God knowing and understanding and telling us that something was going to happen.
Well, I'm unconvinced that the oldest date is after the fact. What's the evidence for that?
I'm sorry. Wow, Peter, you suck. Because that was one point, and I don't care if you're convinced of it or not, But my objection did not hinge on whether or not it was predictive. My objection was conditioned on whether or not there's a way to demonstrate that the best or only explanation for a true prediction is that there's a God involved.
Yeah, I get it. Then therein lies my struggle, and it's part of, it's something I've been involved in and doing for 20 years, and I've watched you now for 2 years. I've probably seen 500 of your episodes, and I'm super compelled, and I'm struggling. I'm going to be honest.
Well, you need to learn more about epistemology and how you can go about demonstrating that something is in fact a prophecy from a God versus, hey, I don't know why the proposed prediction in this event are in alignment.
That's fair. I appreciate that.
Peter, with what you were talking
Yes.
about in the beginning, so I'm trying to understand, were you calling in because you're saying what's the harm in kind of still believing in this light version as long as you don't believe in end times theology? Is that kind of what you were getting at?
It's not necessarily what's the harm, I say. I've found incredible utility in helping my fellow Christians step away from trying to make this world worse so Jesus can come back. And I think that's a big problem right now in American evangelical Christianity, which is, here we have Donald Trump is going to be the next president. It pisses me off.
Yeah, and I think
largely...
that the way forward is with skepticism and with valuing what is true instead of kind of watering down something that I believe to not be true. So why wouldn't we go ahead and take it all the way and say, like, is this true or not? Because that's what should matter, is if it's true or not if it's, well, maybe this is a way to kind of hold their hand and get them out of it. I think it should matter, because if it is true, I want to know that. If it's true that if we do a bunch of stuff, Jesus is coming back, I would like to know that. If that's not true, I would like to know that.
It's also incredibly condescending to think that you can learn and handle the truth and escape Christianity, but you just need to soften Christianity for those other people, the lesser people.
Well, it's not softened from my perspective. I mean, the whole dispensational futurism is a relatively new invention in Christianity. It's not, it's 150, 60 years old. Prior to that, the bulk of the eschatology of the church has been partial preterism. Mostly, Matthew 24 has always been assigned to the destruction of Jerusalem up until the last 150 years. So it's not a softening; it's a bringing back to the roots, I guess, is what I've always looked at it as.
Yes, it is. It is not that. It is you thinking you're right and having no way to demonstrate it. It is you thinking you know better and having no way to demonstrate it. It is you overcoming certain aspects of Christianity that were obviously wrong and fairly simple and replacing them with the things that you don't currently have the ability to explain away.
That, I guess that's fair. And then I guess I'm coming from a typical, the fallacy of, well, what else could it be? I get that. I've listened to you enough that I understand that. And I've almost dialed the phone to you a few times and just haven't. And I just brought myself to do it today, figuring, you folks will be the guys to set me straight.
So, Peter, are you genuinely saying that you have lost belief in so many parts of this, but there's this one thing, this one prophecy that is continuing your belief in this specific
Yeah,
God? And you're saying
yeah,
like,
it's
convince me that's not true because this is the one thing. Because to me, if
the,
everything else fell apart, because that's what happened to me, then I was easily able to look at that and be like, okay, that's so silly to, because I went to Israel. I mean, I went to Jerusalem. I was all over that place. And yet here I am very much an atheist because none of that was compelling evidence. So if you're just like, look, I don't want to believe this anymore, but what do I do about this one thing? Then I think that's your answer. Go research that more. I think Matt already gave you a very, very, very solid answer that might help you to go back and listen to again after this call. Um, but that's not a prophecy. Something getting destroyed after it was already written about in a book is not interesting to me.
fair enough.
I care more. I appreciate the fact, John, or sorry, Peter. I was looking at my notes from John. My apologies.
Okay.
I appreciate the fact, Peter, that you're struggling with something and you're honest enough to acknowledge that and everything else and say, God help. That's great. I also appreciate the fact that you have considered the option that, like many others, it may be better to try, strategically wiser, to try to reform the Christians that you can reach. I know Muslims who are actively working to reform Islam by reaching the Muslims that they can reach. The problem is there are versions of both of those religions that are resistant, if not immune, to serious reform. And the ground that you're occupying with the hope of reform is one of, I don't believe, I'm going to be a little bit rude here, Peter, and for that I apologize. It
That's
seems
okay.
to me that you do not believe there is a God, and you do not believe Christianity is true, and you are not convinced that these are the facts of the world, but you can't, you're afraid that if you throw it out, you haven't solved the prophecy problem. You haven't solved the origin of the universe problem. You haven't solved the moral problem, whatever it is. And so that's the thing that's keeping you in there. And so because you don't want to let go of it entirely, you think that you can, and by the way, when I say you think, I realize I completely tell people all the time, don't assume somebody's motivations. I'm saying this to you so that you can verify it or deny it. I'm not asserting this is the case. It seems that you think that if you can just reform Christianity to get rid of the parts that you don't like and build a Christian church that is focused on using this for productive good and whatever else, and then you guys will just be like, well, we don't know how to resolve this prophecy stuff. I think that that may be your goal. And while that is certainly a better goal than Westboro Baptist Church's goal, my goal is to get to the truth. And I don't want to reform cancer. I want to cure it. And Christianity is cancer, and Islam is cancer, and Scientology is bone cancer. And, I mean, if I'm wrong about what you're trying to do, I apologize and retract it. But if that is what you're trying to do, I'd recommend reaching out to recoveringfromreligion.org and also realizing that you can, without saying I'm a Christian, object to the exact same things. If you and I object to the exact same things, and neither of us has an explanation for how somebody wrote about the destruction of the temple and then it happened, then that's the same thing as all those other claims that you and I don't have an answer to. I don't have an answer to every potential case of spontaneous combustion. I don't have an answer to the various claims of unidentified aerial phenomenon. I don't have an answer to why, when I was laying on a trampoline with two of my friends looking up at the moon, it looked like the moon moved and wiggled to all of us. Maybe we were delusional. Maybe we were high. I don't know what the explanation is. But the mistake would be affirming an explanation that you cannot demonstrate. And if you affirm that prophecy is likely from a God, you are already assuming that a God is possible, should be considered a candidate, is eligible to be true, and that the prophecy is in fact a prediction that needs an explanation beyond chance or people actively working towards a goal.
Well said. And I'm going to take that to heart. I have heard you talk about and your objections to people talking about prophecy that it needs to be specific. You have a list of things that prophecy would need to be before you would consider that. But it sounds to me like that wouldn't really do it anyway.
It needs to be specific, answerable by a single circumstance without interpretation. If I predict the winning lottery numbers and they're out publicly where everybody can verify that they're out publicly and they turn out to be the lottery numbers, now we have a verified prediction answerable by a single circumstance. Nobody has to interpret. It's not like, the numbers are, Matt picked 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42, but the lottery numbers were 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 43.
Right.
Well, that's close enough. No, it's not. You don't win until you get all of them.
Yeah,
and I guess, go ahead.
In predicting, that, or claiming the claim that a prediction was made about a temple being destroyed during a time when political unrest was no secret. This was happening, and when there was a precedent for this happening before, a temple being destroyed due to political unrest, that's not that interesting to make this vague, like, well, this important building is going to get destroyed. That, even if that had been, a prediction, that's still deeply uninteresting when none of the specifics, the Bible makes some really specific claims about prophecies that did not occur. So for this one vague one to be where you're hung up, I think it would maybe benefit you to go look at all the ones that were completely failed and juxtapose them to how vague this one was.
Yeah.
Sure. I guess for me, I'm stuck on the not one stone will be left standing upon another before this generation passes. Sounds pretty specific to me. It's not just one of these days the temple's going to be destroyed.
Sounds like poetry to me.
That's
and I have no evidence that not one stone is left standing on another. As a matter of fact,
Right.
I think we have evidence that there were still stones standing on another. So if that's the specificity that you're honoring, go over there and see if there's any stones still standing on each other. Because I guarantee you, after the destruction of the temple, there was in fact stones still standing on each other. Promise has been there to see it. I've only seen pictures.
Yeah, there are stones very much standing on each other still. So that's another problem is as you that's why I'm saying go back and look at those details, and then look at what actually happened in reality. And I think that will help you a lot.
Also, look up the Bible's prophecies about Tyre, because Bible prophesied that Tyre would be utterly destroyed and never rebuilt, and Tyre remains to this day. So there's a biblical prophecy that's wrong. And what's the Bible say about prophecies that are wrong and their origin?
That they're not from God.
Boom, boom, boom. Also, the Bible says that God is not the author of the confusion, and the Bible is clearly full of confusion and inspiring tons of confusion, which means the Bible can't be inspired by God. Boom, boom, boom. The Bible proves the Bible wrong.
Well, thanks, you guys. I was seeking some help, and you have been helpful. I appreciate that you were not too hard on me, Matt, for my first time calling. I hope to call in again sometime. I didn't get put on mute. That was a victory for today, right?
I appreciate that you don't think I was too hard on you. People are going to take anyway. Let's just go. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
You bet. Bye-bye.
You're welcome to call back anytime. Bye-bye.
Almost anytime. We're only live sometimes.
Wow.
And so if you call when we're not live, that's not going to work out. Which is a good time to give a reminder that today's show, the Sunday show, is myself and Promise. There's a Sunday show after dark, which starts at 7 p.m. Central tonight with Forrest Valkai and John Gleason. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Central, Erica Gibbon is going to be hosting Skep Talk. I don't know if it's going to be a 10-hour show like the last one, but I don't really care because I just love listening to Erica. I love listening to Forrest too, but I love listening to Erica as well.
They're amazing.
On Tuesday, you're hosting Chewed Gum with Alyssa.
Yes.
I don't know if you know. Do you have an item topic that you guys are planning on focusing on Tuesday, or is it just going to be?
We never know what.
Oh my God, never know.
We never know. I would love to hear from. There's a lot of people in our comments, obviously as the week goes on, people go in the comments criticizing different things, like us saying or the way that we look or things like that. And I'd love for some of those guys, because of course it is mostly guys saying these things, to actually call and tell us why that is that's a problem for them. I don't know. Those
Yeah.
kind of conversations would be cool. But I'm always looking for theist callers because I don't get those very often. I'm not sure why not. We've started to get a few more lately, but if theists want to call, and usually I am one who will let people talk longer. So if you're wanting to really talk, then call and have a chat. We usually have less callers, obviously, than the Sunday show. So we can give you a little bit more time. And I'm happy to do that. So if you're too afraid to call today, then call tomorrow night.
Thanks for watching that clip. Hey, we're trying to do some data research about whether or not our callers successfully proved that God existed. If they didn't, don't forget to like and subscribe. That's how we know they failed. But if you don't like and subscribe, you're saying that they succeeded. So you're saying that by liking and subscribing, you will be affirming that you are an atheist. Hey, what else should they do?
I don't know. Maybe go to patreon.com/calltheline and donate some of their hard-earned money.
Like and subscribe.